growing up in the United States with your parents always working, they didn't really have time for storytelling. So my mom, growing up, would only tell one story and one story only before bed, and that was the Ramayana. And she had different illustrated copies, so I don't remember who the illustrator was. But I grew up on like myths, and I would ask her, I was like, Mom, please, just please tell me another story. You've told this. I've learned about Hanuman for like the 100th time. Please tell me another one. She's like, no, you need to learn this story. Like, this is your history. Like, this is the story. I don't know why she fixated on that versus the Mahabharata, but I, now that I think about it, I feel like growing up on the Ramayana and learning it inside and out has really influenced how I see stories, if that makes sense. Um, I think compared to Mahabharata, which is just such a beautiful, epic, sweeping tale, the Ramayana almost feels a little bit more intimate. I feel like it's because the characters are there's like almost like a smaller cast of central characters, right? We have Ram, Sita, Lakshman, um, Ravan, and all their families are involved, Gaiki, but to me, it was very much the intimate relationships between brother and brother, husband and wife, wife to her family, wife to her kingdom. And what would always uh, kind of bother me as a kid was the ending with Sita, right? Where she has Agni Parishka and then she has to like walk through the flames and no one believes her. Even her husband didn't believe her. Even though it was like, she didn't do anything wrong. Like, what is happening? And so I remember asking my mom, and it's like, why is this like, our gods are supposedly perfect, and Ram is a god, and why did he doubt his wife if he's all knowing? Um, and whatever answer she gave me was always unsatisfying. And I think in my stories, somehow I'm always searching for that answer, an answer that makes these complex relationships where even the most loving husband and loving wife uh, create betrayals, the complex, intricate, intimate relationships that people have with each other. And I think that translates to my stories where yes, they love each other, but they would lie for each other, they would cheat on each other, like they would, and somehow that they all still love one another at the same time. And I think it was just that moral debacle, that, moral messiness is something that I love to explore in my stories and show that even like gods, not necessarily flawed, but are very human, because Ram was also human. And I think that story, I'm older, so now I know what the lesson was, for that, and that like Sita, like it was very much a lesson of how society views women and how society is gossiping, always judging, and we always say, that saying "lo kya kahenge," right? And even now we still say that, and it's like that story is supposed to say, no, you're not supposed to listen to what "lo kya kahenge," right? And so, to me, it's just a beautiful story. It's a universal, and yeah, I can't. I feel like people can write PhDs on it, and they have. So it's just never ending. Well, there's three new Indian fantasy books coming out this summer, which is very unheard of. Indian famous. There's like first of all, like I mentioned before in the beginning, is that we have so little representation in young adult children's books, but then even like it gets less and less as we go up in like the age range, like Indian adult fantasy or just Indian fantasy in general. But this summer, there's three new debuts. So we kick off in June with The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rao. And it's this lush, captivating sci-fi adventure with a older married couple whose marriage are on the rocks, and they live on this flying island, um, and above these tropical storms. And one of them is the chief architect, the husband, who is in charge of keeping that island floating, and operating. And his wife is like, uh, what would I say? Learns, like, is trying to I'm trying not to give spoilers, but she's also, they're involved, and it's this beautiful, captivating stories of very competent characters still messing up, and what happens when that happens. So I'm very excited about that. The second book that comes out in July is Sons of Darkness. I don't know if you can see it, by Gaurav Mohanty, and this is a grimdark reimagining of the Mahabharata. So it's like Game of Thrones meets Mahabharata. And it's very it's like epic and expansive. It has all the different battles, and it has like your favorite characters in it in the Mahabharata. And I think it's just a fun, great, gripping fantasy. And then there's my book that's coming out in August, The Phoenix King, which is more so like a adventure fantasy inspired by Indian mythology, specifically the goddesses, so Ma Kali, Durga Ma, and it's coming right after the other. So we have June, July, August. So this summer, like, Indian fantasy is going to own this summer. We're gonna have so many more books and characters to love, and they're all series. I think they're all trilogies, so there's going to be 2 more books in each trilogy. So I'm very, very excited for all the readers to get their hands on it and just get so much more books to talk about. It's not just there's only one Indian fantasy that everyone has to read and everyone knows. No, there's so many more options now to fixate over, to talk about, to critique. So I'm very much looking forward to that. For me, what I found to be super helpful is finding books or under topics that excite you. So for me, I love fantasy books. I love fantasy books that are inspired by mythologies or retellings. I'm a huge mythologist, and that's what gets me so excited. So it doesn't even have to be Indian fantasy. It could be South American fantasy. It could be Venezuelan fantasy. It could be Indonesian fantasy. Like, to me, I love to explore different cultures through understanding where the culture's myths originate from, because I think when you understand the culture's myth, you understand its people a little bit more, because myths and our old epic tales give the values, traditions that we create our society upon. And so I always find that to be very interesting to learn about, especially through a storyteller's perspective. Like, I don't care about the scholars, I don't care about the PhD candidates, I want to read the author's point of view and see how they use their own creativity and bring new life to that myth. So I would recommend finding a topic that really excites you, and finding books underneath that topic. Now, what if you don't have a topic that excites you? Just like, look, I don't know anything. Like, I just want to get started. I would recommend going on places like Goodreads or other review sites. And there's this thing called lists where people will show new upcoming books, or books for when you're bored. The people will create these lists, books if you want, books with a dupatta scene where the dupatta gets stuck in his sleeve, and I was like, my book has that scene, you will love it. So it's little people get so creative, and the resources are there. It just takes some effort to find them, but I think once you find it, you can go through the list and just go through a book, rent it out from your library, check it out from your library, so you don't have to pay, especially if you don't have the money for it, just rent it out, and see if you like it. And if not, go down to the next list in a book, and if you do like that book, explore the other author's works. So it's, as long as you have the passion to want to read more, I think that's great. I would just suggest going on these sites and finding these lists and going from there to explore books.